ऑलराइट, वंस अगेन मेरे साथ हैं सागर लेले सर फ्रॉम रुपीटिंग। आई थिंक उनकी शर्ट पे मुझे लोगों का थोड़ा सा झलक भी मिल रहा है रुपीटिंग का।
Oh yeah,
ऑसम।
sure.
तो वंस अगेन उनसे काफी कुछ डिस्कस करना है। दिस इज काइंड ऑफ अ वीकली स्लैश मंथली रैप अप। लास्ट एक्सपायरी हो गई है, जून पे पोजीशंस रोल ओवर कर ली होंगी लोगों ने अपनी, जो भी रही होंगी। सो वी थॉट कि इस मंथ जो भी हुआ, लेट्स हैव अ ब्रॉडर व्यू कि क्या चल रहा है मार्केट में। तो बिफोर वी स्टार्ट एंड डिस्कस इंडिविजुअल टॉपिक्स, उसमें आई थिंक जो हम लोग ब्रॉडली डिस्कस कर रहे थे, वन वाज वुड हैव बीन यूएस की डेट सीलिंग का इशू इस समय लोगों के दिमाग में है। इन्फ्लेशन इज ऑन पीपल्स माइंड, वो काफी टाइम से चल ही रहा है, एक इशू वो वाला हो गया। देन अदानी ग्रुप को एक क्लीन चिट मिला था, उसका इशू वी कैन डिस्कस। बट बिफोर वी डेल्व इनटू दैट, एक ब्रॉडर आउटलुक इफ यू कैन टेल अस कि व्हाट आर यू एक्सपेक्टिंग, आई फ्रॉम हियर ऑन, आर यू एक्सपेक्टिंग साइडवेज, तीन ही पॉसिबिलिटी है, साइड, नीचे, ऊपर, या क्या चल रहा है आपके दिमाग में ब्रॉडली मार्केट में?
See, I think there was room for rally. वो already आ गई है. That is in the past now. I think that rally has already played out. The market has performed extremely well over the last month and a half to two. So that's something. Bottom आया था, valuations were looking decent compared to some of the valuations we've seen over the last year. Um, and there has been some respite in the form of macro data, which played out. So I think again we're at a juncture where the risk reward seems to be मतलब ऐसे direct टेबल पे पैसा रखा है और छीन लो, वैसा सिचुएशन नहीं है अभी.
हम्म।
So I think again our strategy comes back to this, that whenever there is a dip in the market because of macro, because of anything related to uh, domestic also, या फिर ऐसे general fall आता है, I think those are good times to keep accumulating and picking up.
हम्म।
So our strategy has been keep buying on dips. अभी जैसे market बढ़ा है, don't get encouraged because we are not calling it a structural turn in the
हम्म।
direction of the market yet.
हम्म।
Um, so we'd continue to keep buying on dips. Fall दिखा, we're happy, buy and then ride the waves. So keep averaging is our simple strategy.
क्लीन चिट जो अदानी ग्रुप को मिला, आई थिंक काफी उसका इम्पैक्ट रहा है। रिलायंस भी उसके बाद से आई थिंक काफी अच्छा मूव दे दिया रिलायंस ने भी, अदानी जी के बाद क्लीन चिट मिलने का। तो उस पर क्या आपका अभी व्यू चल रहा है सर?
See, I think with the whole Adani aspect, the ambiguity did cause at least a perception issue when it came to India, right? And with foreign investors investing in India.
या।
So it's not about the Adani stocks falling massively and making a difference in the index because they don't make too much of a difference. It's about the sentiment. It's about how investors look at India. It's about how freely they are willing to invest in India.
राइट।
Um, and I think it getting a clean sheet and the stocks returning or recouping a lot of the losses do bring it to a situation where investors would be like a little at least relieved given the fact that SC से clean sheet मिला है.
हम्म।
So and in any case, I think those who were staying away from Adani stocks even before,
हम्म।
uh, for whatever reason, whether it was their suspicion on governance or whether it was extremely high valuations,
हम्म।
those who are not comfortable with it will not anyway invest.
राइट।
उनको तो टर्न करना ही नहीं है,
हम्म।
right? So I don't see them getting affected कि suddenly all the mutual funds will rush towards buying Adani. Active fund managers consciously stayed away from Adani all this while, and
हम्म।
they'll, I think, continue to. So in terms of incremental inflow, at least in the Adani stocks, doesn't make a difference. In terms of India's perception and inflow into India or decision making into India for foreign funds, I think it will make a little bit of a difference, and that must have caused a little bit of more liquidity to more easily flow into the Indian markets rather than it becoming difficult कि भैया इंडिया दूर रहो, corporate governance कुछ भी हो सकता है, the government and corporates are in bad shape, let's stay away, right? I
राइट।
think at the end of it, that's how allocation for at least global funds works, where they have a choice between India, Taiwan, Philippines, China, whatever. कुछ भी रेड फ्लैग दिखा एंड एनीवे इट इज अबाउट 1% 2% ऑफ देयर ओवरऑल होल्डिंग्स
या।
है, लाइक हाँ ठीक है 2% नहीं एलोकेट किया, कौन सा बड़ा चीज है, राइट? बट फॉर इंडिया इट मेक्स अ डिफरेंस इफ लाइक 100 FIs think that way.
राइट। राइट।
So
एब्सोल्युटली।
I think definitely a perception change and some amount of liquidity easing or flowing into the country will be eased because of this.
आई थिंक इंटरेस्टिंग टॉपिक कुड बी हम लोगों का जो यूएस डेट सीलिंग के ऊपर चल रहा है,
Yeah.
काफी बड़े बड़े डिस्कशंस हुए हैं इस पे लोगों के, मतलब फ्रॉम आई थिंक यूएस की ट्रेजरी इटसेल्फ, उसमें किसी का तो स्टेटमेंट आया था कि अगर ये नहीं हुआ तो 45% तक मार्केट गिर जाएगा एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट, बट या व्हाट्स योर थॉट ऑन दिस सर?
See, I think there's one fundamental truth that we have to all accept, that the US breaching or coming close to breaching the debt ceiling has been a thing since the 1960s. There is nothing new in this. ये और हमने देखा है मार्केट में हमेशा न्यूज में आता है, गवर्नमेंट शटडाउन होता है, कुछ ना कुछ हो जाता है. This has been happening for years. And I'll give you an interesting fact. Since the 1960s, the US has raised its debt ceiling 78 times. Okay, so uh, the US has been in this situation many times. It is not new, right? There is drama each time. That is also not new. And there are always two options. One option is there is a threat that US will default on its debt. In the 78 times, it has never defaulted on its debt. US defaulting on its debt will be a global financial crisis which has never happened before. एंड अगर यूएस का AAA रेटेड डेट अगर डाउट में आ गया तो तुम बाकी का डेट तो भूल ही जाओ. मतलब देन द वर्ल्ड फाइनेंशियल सिस्टम का क्रेडिबिलिटी इज अंडर कोलैप्स, राइट? सो आई डोंट थिंक द यूएस विल डिफॉल्ट ऑन इट्स डेट लाइक इट has. I mean, like it never has. So let's throw that option outside as highly improbable. I'm not calling it impossible. Let's call it highly improbable. Second option, what they'll do is they'll either raise the debt ceiling or temporarily suspend the debt ceiling. Right? For that, an agreement is required in the Senate and the House. Abhi wo, that's where the interesting part comes, where this drama also always happens. कि वो टाइम लगता है डिसीजन में, एंड इन दैट टाइम दे स्टार्ट रनिंग आउट ऑफ मनी, एवरीबडी कम्स इन पैनिक स्टेट, गवर्नमेंट में पार्शियल शटडाउन होता है, बिजली का बिल भरने के लिए पैसा नहीं है, 1/3 लोगों को घर पे बिठाया है, उनकी सैलरीज नहीं पे कर रहे, डिफेंस का स्पेंडिंग कम डाउन किया है, एजुकेशन पे, वेलफेयर का स्पेंडिंग कम किया है, ऑल दैट कीप्स हैपनिंग. सो ऑल दैट विल हैपन, राइट? हाईली प्रोबेबल. लेट्स नॉट कॉल इट विल हैपन, हाईली प्रोबेबल. नाउ same repetition. However, the only difference is that usually the economy is in good shape when this happens. Currently, the economy is not in good shape.
Yeah.
So the question to ask is the drama is going to happen? What is the impact of the drama this time around? And the impact of the drama this time around is aggravated because of what is happening in the macro situation.
Right.
So you are in a place where inflation is very high. It has started showing or coming down. But the Fed has been increasing rates. The Fed has been increasing rates to do what? Primarily to slow down the economy. Right? Now, if the government shutdown happens, right, you are slowing the economy down further. Right? You're curbing expenditure. तुम्हारा restrictive monetary policy के साथ there automatically comes a situation of a regressive fiscal policy as well.
Yeah.
Because पैसा ही नहीं है खर्च करने के लिए. So both monetary and fiscal policy become regressive. Now, why is this regression a problem? Because the Fed is coming to a point where it is scared that if it is increasing rates too high, regional banks का already crisis आ रहा है, is it hitting the economy too hard? Is there a possibility of a hard recession because of this? If you're already juggling with that situation and a US government shutdown has to come, even partial, that hard recession possibility increases. If a hard recession possibility increases, then it is about a US economic slowdown, US markets going down, the world getting affected, and all of that jazz.
Yeah.
So you might see a repeat of what happened when the inflation situation started, or when Russia-Ukraine plus inflation came together, and that kind of a scene, right? So a market impact of that gravity could happen, although at that time there was uncertainty in terms of timeline. कि रशिया-यूक्रेन पता नहीं कितना टाइम चलेगा. Now you know कि जून में पैसा खत्म होगा तो जुलाई तक, maximum July tak, at least the debt ceiling will be temporarily suspended, and the US will be able to take on more debt. So it's a short-term issue according to me. High impact, but short-term. So again, the markets may go down, the world may go into panic mode, but catastrophic nahi hai. Hard recession ka probability increase hota hai. The markets may react to that and fall and show increased volatility. But as again, the theory stands that India is much better placed. India ka to relative growth is still better, and relative growth improves if the US goes down, because again, India's got its domestic consumption and domestic factors fueling all its macro movement. So I think again, if the markets fall, good time to pick it up.
Awesome.
US is not defaulting, and this issue is not long lived.
हाँ,
So
वो तो मतलब highly improbable.
yeah.
इसमें सर एक चीज जो यू वेरी राइटली पॉइंट आउट कि शॉर्ट टर्म में वी मे गेट सम डिप्स टू बाय बिकॉज ऑफ दिस इशू. टू व्हाट एक्सटेंट डू यू थिंक इस समय मार्केट ने फैक्टर इन कर रखा है अ क्राइसिस? मतलब क्या जो यूएस में हम लोग देख रहे हैं, क्या आर दे बुलिश राइट नाउ ऑन दिस कि ये तो हो ही जाएगा वाला मोड है, या फिर दे आर एक्सपेक्टिंग थोड़ा थोड़ा ऑलरेडी दबा के रखा हुआ स्टॉक्स को, एंड इफ वी गेट अ न्यूज़ की सीलिंग रेज हो गई तो फिर भाग भी सकता है यूएस?
See, I think we're at a state where the market has anyway it has recuperated a lot of the losses, right? It was at some point YTD नहीं, 1 year it was down 30%. अभी वो 10% तक का recoup आ गया है.
Right.
So I think it has already factored in the bottom in terms of, and that was linked more to inflation than to this, right? So I don't think anybody is factoring in a default in any case, right? That hard hit on the recession factor may come in. But US का ये scene है that any news, if the hard recession comes into factor, then they'll assume कि चलो Fed will account for this and will not raise rates. तो खुश खुश रहो. I think the US is in a place where it's looking or hunting for good news. So any good news, and the valuations are also such that any good news or any positive news or any aversion of crisis will always lead to short-term rallies. So you might see dips because of the volatility or whatever, but अगर news आता है कि US ने debt ceiling बढ़ा दिया तो market भाग गया. Apple ने अच्छा announce कर दिया, result market भाग गया. I think they're in a hunt for good news, and I think that is
दोनों ही साइड में आई थिंक they're ready. Bears and bulls are both दोनों अपने machine guns
yeah. So I think it's about rather than direction, I think it's about heightened volatility and not about direction right now.
Right.
So volatility will keep increasing till there is more clarity in terms of, one, what the US government is doing about the debt ceiling, and number two, about what the Fed's next step is.
Right.
Till then, volatility will increase, but then walls can come down significantly after that.
फाइनली एक ऐसा इशू जो मतलब आई थिंक जब से पैदा हुए तब से सुनते आ रहे हैं, विच इज इन्फ्लेशन एंड आरबीआई की पॉलिसी रेट्स.
Yeah. I think with inflation, there was a respite in the last report. Food inflation is finally easing down. Vegetable prices are actually facing disinflation since the last few months. So even the last month, food prices were actually, I think they declined by 15% or something like that. So I think it's a good sign. Some easing is coming into place. The RBI has already taken a pause and said that, hey, there is a lagging effect on the economy, so let's sit back and assess what the impact is. And there seems to be that in the process. At the same time, I think jo fear tha that the heat waves will destroy crops and all of that. The crop has been good. Winter crop has been good. Uska koi impact nahi aaya. So I think things are good, at least from an inflation standpoint. It is under control. I think the only place where it's not under control right now is in the UK and in Europe, where it's still at 8%, 10% levels. But US में थोड़ा ease होते हुए दिख रहा है, India में ease होते हुए दिख रहा है. You see petrol prices, crude prices, they seem to have contracted. So I think inflation has started coming down, and that's a real thing. But here's the deal, right? So this will only result in central banks, whether it's the Fed or the RBI, to pause their rate hikes. It's not the time to start factoring in a reversal in the interest rate policy. Pausing rate hikes is not equal to cutting rates and boosting the economy. So that's not to be interpreted as, ठीक है, good news hai. But I think this brings us from a negative to a neutral state, and not from neutral to positive. Right? Positive is when you're actually boosting the economy by reducing rates, and you can afford to do that. I think we are far from that. That should still take a few months. So pausing definitely happening, and I think that wahi cheez market mein factor ho gayi hai. Right? That recent rally has already factored in, whether it's in the US or whether it's in India, it has already factored in that rate pauses are real, and India mein to dikh gaya, and that may sustain in the case of India, but that may start in the case of the US. So I think we've notched from negative to neutral. Definitely our stance, at least in equities, has gone from negative to neutral, and hence, rather than going and screaming buy when we were negative, I think it's time to say let's buy on dips and be more prudent in terms of capital allocation, and not just buy at any level whenever there's a rally. Not get encouraged and go all out saying chalo market turn dip.
Awesome. Thank you so much once again for enlightening
Anytime.
us with your knowledge, sir. Sharing some of those insights with us. We hope you'll join us again. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Looking forward to the next time. Thank you.
All right, sir.